Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to week 4 of the NPL Minors. This week we face off against Redithan, who is 2-1, I believe, at this point, and I am 3-0. So definitely someone at the top of their game. I think he's currently second in his conference, maybe third. Jar is first. This is a cross-conference match, so it doesn't matter quite as much, but uh, it still matters. But we were unfortunately matched up with one of the better players from the other conference, so we're hoping to pull out a win this week. Uh, th- I'll tell you Ethan's draft real quick. He has Hoopa Unbound, which is his Z user. Interestingly over Garchomp. And then he has Garchomp, Shaman, Crobat, Rotom Wash, Klefki, Alolan Marowak, Cloyster, Venomoth, and Mega Gallade. Now let me tell you about this matchup real quick. I'm not one to talk about matchups a lot, but when they're bad, they're bad. Unfortunately, this is one of those bad matchups. See, against his team, his offensive present, like most teams are built with balance in mind. My team is more towards the offensive side. I've drafted some bulky mons as well. His is definitely balance, but balance comes with some offensive mons, some more stally mons. His stally mons um, wall mine incredibly well. His breakers break my team. Well, they break my team decently, but he's a little bit of trouble versus mons like Crook. But his offensive mons like Mega Glade, Hoopa, Cloyster, Venomoth, those mons destroy me. So if you take a look at my draft real quick, I doubt I'm gonna put it on the screen. I'm a little bit too lazy for that. He is a Mega Glade versus Megalodios. Megalade isn't too threatened by Megalodios because it's able to take any one hit, and if it's already set up, maybe an SD or a bulk up or something, it can do a ton with an X Scissor. And if I'm not offensive, then I just lose to it anyway, since I can't even 2 KO it. That mon is ridiculous Spadef. And then Dragon Claw, that's a weaker stab, that's not going to do as much either. Azumarill, Azumarill is like my only mon that can take like unboosted hits decently well from Mega Gallade. He's likely going to have probably Thunder Punch or Poison Jab on his set to hit Azumarill, but it's not the greatest pivot because my priority isn't powerful enough to kill him while he's like over 40% of health, something like that. So that's not the best either. I can threaten him out, but he is decent counterplay to Azumarill that I'll get into later. Crocodile, it can't 1 KO Glade with anything and dies to close combat or Drain Punch. Tangrowth gets set up on really easily. I don't have a good way to deal that much damage to it. Although I can potentially check Glade if I'm weakened, like at all, it becomes very difficult to. And if I'm, offensive enough to be able to 2 KO him, then like after he's set up a little bit or something like that. Like when I build, I like to assume the worst, so I have to assume that he's already set up a little bit. Tangrowth like isn't good enough to help deal with that. And then Sneasel, can't really hit it very hard. Golbat is destroyed by its Psychic Stab, and Metagross can take a hit as well, but it can't OHKO back, and it gets set up on if he's a bulk up variant. So especially the bulk up variant, very threatening versus my team. As you can see with this first one here, the defensive Megalodios, I'm trying to have some counterplay to that bulk up variant a little bit. I have the Thunder Wave on this set because it's really my only way to help deal with Glade. My best way to deal with it is to Thunder Wave it and then kill it with my Banded Darmanitan later on in the game. But it's not the best strategy because I still have to end up sacking him on. I'm not saying like Mega Glade 6-0s me or anything because it definitely doesn't. I've won mocks for this game where people bring Mega Glade. It's not like I'm unprepped for it or anything, but it's a huge threat. So I'm looking to deal with it by using this mon. This mon is so important because if I don't have this mon and he has rocks up, then it's really hard for me to beat a bulk up variant of Mega Glade. So I'm gonna need to keep this healthy. The reason I have Lax Nature with Earthquake is because he has Clef Key, and I don't want that thing to switch in for free on me, set up Light Screen and Spikes. I'm really not into Spike stacking this game, because I'm not bringing Defog on this set, and it would be incredibly annoying to have to deal with spikes from mons like Lucario, Darmanitan, especially since I'm not a Scarf Darmanitan. Sneasel has less Life Orb hits. Crocodile can't switch into Garchomp as well, stuff like that. And then next mon I have is Lucario. This one can do a decent job of sweeping his team. I'll need to weaken Gallade a little bit to be able to sweep, but the reason I'm Air Balloon is so I can send this in on a Shaman or Garchomp and able to have the chance to set up, because because I don't like, even though +2 Lucario puts in a ton of work versus his team, I don't have this setup opportunity versus a lot of his mons. Like Earth Power Shaman just does a ton to me if I'm not Air Balloon. So Air Balloon helps me set up on those mons and help get a sweep. Pretty self-explanatory set. Um, oh yeah, and I have Vacuum Wave on this in case he gets to... It deals a ton to Cloyster if he tries to set up with that, which was another huge threat to my team, because my best and only way to deal with Cloyster, like priority-wise, is Vacuum Wave from Lucario, which kind of forces me to bring it, but I probably would have brought it even if he didn't have a Cloyster. But being forced to run Vacuum Wave means I don't have coverage for some other stuff on his team, like I can't hit Glade super effectively with a set, or neutrally with a stab. I need to go for like a +2 E speed, which isn't doing a ton, but it does like 55, something like that, I believe. Maybe a little more. Actually, maybe it does like 70. I don't know. I haven't done that calc in a while. I played this game a little bit ago. Next one is this Scarf Intimidate Crook. This is a good pivot around Garchomp. I can get up my rocks versus it, even though Scarf rocks aren't like the best deal in the world. It ends up working out pretty well. Since he has decent switch-ins to Crocodile and like Crobat and Rotom Wash and Cloyster, I can set up rocks on the switch and maybe deal with those things a little bit better. Pursuit for helping to weaken Mega Glade. It's good for Hoopa as well. Like this thing can, is my best way to deal with Scarf Hoopa. It's just a nice dark resist, because Lucario and Sneasel don't really count because they get 2KO'd easily by Hyperspace Fury anyway. Especially if Klefki gets a couple spikes up. Then I have Banded Darmanitan. This mon is here to punish Shaman, because before I had this mon on my team in Mox, Shaman was absolutely demolishing my team because I'm not bringing any Toxic. I'm bringing, a lot of faster, either like Scarf or not the most powerful variant of mons. And even Scarf Darmanitan isn't able to OHKO a fully defensive Shaman, which is crazy because it's weak to fire and it's a Darmanitan and it's still not able to kill. So I have Will-O-Wisp on the set to possibly catch Garchomp on a switch, but otherwise I could just go for Flare Blitz and things will die. He doesn't really have the best switch into this. He is like Alolan Marowak, but it's weak to rocks if I'm able to get them up with Crook early game. So not the best mon, but it's my best way to revenge a T-Wave Mega Gallade as well, so take that as you will. A lot. The problem with Mega Gallade is I just don't have any mons that can revenge it at all. Like, even my Scarfers aren't able to deal enough to it. Unless I run like Scarf Azumarill, but I'm not even sure that's fast enough to outspeed Mega Gallade. Pretty sure it isn't. And that's just a weird set too. Alright, I'll stop talking about Scarf Azumarill. And then we got Thundurus. This is a good pivot for Shaman. Again, Shaman is a huge defensive threat to my team. It's able to, wall stuff for days like my Scarf Crook. Like, I have to bring these two mons, like Darmanitan and Thundurus, because to make up for the weakness to Shaman I have with Latios and Crook, because those mons can't break it at all. I need to take advantage of it with Darmanitan and Thundurus. So this Thundurus is a 4 attacks expert belt set. It's able to put in decent work versus the majority of his team. Garchomp I believe cannot OHKO me with anything except like a, like a max attack Jolly Stone Edge if he gets a higher roll. But I don't, looking at the matchup, I don't think he'll bring Stone Edge just for Thunderous. Probably just have Dragon Stab. And then I have coverage for most of his team. With Expert Belt, I can, KO most things pretty well. And he doesn't have a really good switch in for this. But Glade does come in versus me and revenge me pretty easily. So that is a potential issue. It's just really hard for me to beat Glade. But I'll stop talking about Glade. It's a threat, but you don't need to hear me rambling on and on about it. Then we have the Sneasel. It's an SD Sneasel. Because I didn't really need a fourth move, and late game, if I'm able to predict correctly and get up an SD, then Ice Shard and Knockoff put in a ton of work versus his team. And that's basically the team I brought. So let's get into the match. Maybe we'll do a little bit of live editing real quick. Let's see. There we go. Alright, so Ethan decided to bring the Hoopa U, the Mega Glade, Clef Key. Ooh, I'm sorry if you can hear my computer. I don't know. The fan just is going haywire. We brought the Clef Key, Rotom Wash, Garchomp, and Shaman. I didn't expect the Rotom Wash all too much. I don't think it has brought any mocks against me because it's a little bit countered by Megalodios unless he brings a more heat set, and it also kind of lets Thundy set up a little bit for free. And Thundy's a decent threat versus his team. Obviously, Mega League checks it really well, but if that's weakened, he could have a couple issues. Especially if I'm like an HP bug variant or something like that, or U-turn variant. So I decided to lead Thundy. I have decent. Basically, I figure that he's gonna expect me to lead, maybe with either Crook or Latios, either to get up my rocks or get off my Mega. Either way, so I expect him to maybe lead Klefki or possibly Shaman to deal with either of those. So I lead Thunderous, hoping to be able to get off a juicy Volt Switch on the Klefki or a big Sludge Wave on the Shaman, since his switch into Thunderous are not the best. So I lead off with Thunderous as he leads off with Rotom Wash, which is fine with me because I just get a nice Volt Switch right into Latios. I go for Volt Switch as go right into Latios and he goes for Pump. I can tell from that damage that he's some weird set, like he's not fully offensive, but there's definitely some special attack investment in there. So I have to be careful of that, especially with the minus Spadef nature. If he's carrying a coverage move for me, it could be bad in the future. So what I should be doing here is thinking of probably not switching Latios into this again. So he goes out into his Klefki as I just go for the Roost. I want to keep this thing as healthy as I can for later to help with Glade. But I don't want this Klefki getting up too many spikes, so I just decided to go for the Earthquake as he goes for Reflect, which is really bad for me because I'm not even for KOing him with Earthquake at this point because he's physically defensive and has Reflect. Most people brought specially defensive Klefki with T-Wave or Toxic variant to help with Tangrowth in my mock, so I definitely wasn't expecting this. But I do have a little bit of counterplay. He'll be able to get up both screens here, but I do go to Thunderous in case he wants to T-Wave me, or I don't expect him to go for Light Screen there because Latios doesn't have a good special move to hit Klefki. So I go into Thunderous, take a Dazzling Gleam pretty well, as I'm able to get off a Volt Switch on his Light Screen and go right out into Darmanitan. And now I figure he has a Reflect up. Oh, I figure that he'd rather go into Garchomp than Rotom here because going into Garchomp allows him to, one, get up his rocks. Either that or two, get a free SD if I go for Flare Blitz. And three, he gets Rough Skin damage off on me. So normally I think he might go Rotom here, either just like sacking it or like trying to play a little bit safer around Bandit Darmanitan. But since he has Reflect up, Garchomp's much better play, so I decided to predict that and go for the Will-O-Wisp, as I do land it and get the Garchomp burned, which is huge because That means his Revengers for Thundy aren't the best at this point. So here I decide to go into my Crook just to get up my rocks, get off an Intimidate on the Scarchomp, because now it's burned and -1. It's going to be doing nothing. Even if I lock myself into Scarf Rocks, I can just go out into something else afterwards and deal with it just fine. So I go for my rocks here as he goes into Rotom, and here's where I make a bit of a misplay. Like I should assume, like especially after seeing Uzi's set last week, he was a Thunder Wave, I think either Shadow Ball or Hex set last week that could deal with Latios really well, and I'm minus the def. So he actually predicts me to go out into Latios here and goes for Signal Beam here, and it does a ton. And this is terrible for me because rocks are up, which means Gallade's Drain Punch will be a roll on Darmanitan. A roll in my favor, that is, but still a roll. And basically the rest of my team kind of just dies to Gallade. Crook can intimidate it, but then it kind of just sets up a little bit on it and can get all of its health back with Drain Punch. So Latios getting weakened really worries me, because even though I can stall out his light screen with Roost and weaken this Rotom a ton, which as you can see I do here a little bit, he confuses me, but I don't get confused, which is nice. And here I just go for Dragon Pulse and do a lot to him as he kills me with Signal Beam. Basically, even if I kept this Latios around, it wasn't healthy enough to take a hit from Glade, and I get outsped anyway, so there's no point. I just wanted to get off damage on this Rotom and stall out some light screen turns. So Latios goes down, I go out into Crook. I figure that going out into Crook is my best play because it doesn't reveal my Lucario's Balloon, so I could possibly set up with it on the Shaman later. And I don't want to take rocks damage with Sneasel or Darmanitan, which just get revenge just as easily as the other mons. So I go out into Crook. I just go for knockoff here, kill this Rotom. And he goes into Shaman. And this is pretty free switch into my Thundurus. I don't expect him to be carrying coverage for my Thundurus. Even if he did, it would be like Ancient Power or something like that. And I'm not even sure that would kill. So I go out into Thundurus as he goes for an Earth Power. And I just go for a Sludge Wave. If he stays in, I do a ton to it as he goes for a Seed Flare. And I don't die. Here, I go for HP Ice because it kills this Shaman, and if he wants to go Klefki, keeping this Shaman around as a sack, I can sort of get off a little bit more damage on it than I would otherwise. So I go for HP Ice here as it goes out into Klefki, and now this Thundurus is basically dead because my best way to damage this Klefki is Volt Switch, and Volt Switch makes me die to rocks, so he goes for Light Screen as I Volt Switch out, and I go out into Lucario, and unfortunately revealing my Balloon, and I kill him off with the E-Speed. Don't want him to get off or reflect or anything. So now he has a Glade behind a Light Screen, and this is where it gets real.
Hey guys, Jake here. 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 Hey guys, Jake here.
Either way, good job on Ethan's part for bringing that Glade set. It worked out just as well as it should have. I let my answer to it get weakened early on, and that definitely cost me. So GG to him, smart on him for bringing that set, and hopefully we can redeem ourselves. We're actually tied for conference leader now because that was a pretty big loss. We're
causing
tied
all
with
the
Techno, who's a
cringe
really
of the
good player. I
line
don't want to be
cringe
tied with him
better?
because
Can you see through the
he's
wonder
probably
of
better than me. So
amazement
we'll
of
see how
her
that goes. All right,
hatred?
see you guys next week.
Cringe
Bye.
better.